Hello, everyone, and welcome into another edition of Inquire live at Game Day Central. Today, we are coming to you from the press box here at Lincoln Financial Field, where in a little bit, the Philadelphia Eagles will host the New York Giants in the regular season finale. I'm Eagles beat reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, Josh Tolentino, and as always, I am joined by my co-host of Game Day Central and fellow beat reporter, EJ Smith. EJ, we have made it to the finish line, at least here now for the regular season. How are you feeling?
I'm doing great, Josh. It feels like just yesterday that we were watching, the Eagles play in training camp and preseason games, and Cleveland and Miami, and now we're at the end of the regular season. I think, obviously we'll have a couple weeks, maybe at least one more week, to go here. But yeah, definitely feeling good. Definitely feels like the end of a stretch for sure.
Definitely some football to be played ahead here. It is the month of January, January 8th. Again, week 18, the regular season finale between the Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Giants. EJ, a jam packed show ahead of us. But before we get into it, where is the best place that our readers can continue our conversation and also find our coverage?
Yeah, Josh, Inquirer.com/Eagles Game Days, where we want to have like a two-way conversation with you guys. We put our analysis in there. We want to hear from you as well. We want to know what you guys are seeing, what, maybe something they mentioned on the broadcast that you found interesting, or just what you're thinking about the game. And every week, we take some of those comments from that section for, a segment of the show we called What You Said. It's one of my favorite segments for sure. Again, it's a two-way conversation, where you get a chance to talk to us, our colleagues, Jeff McClain, Mike Sealski, Marcus Hayes. It's a lot of good stuff in there. So definitely, head over there after the show. Maybe you're there right now, head over there and have a conversation with us.
Inquirer.com/Eagles Game Day. That you pointed it out, EJ. That is the place to be to find all of our coverage on our Game Day Central homepage. EJ, let's jump into it. A lot to discuss before this regular season finale. But I think we have to start early in the week on Monday. A very scary situation up there in Cincinnati with Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin suffering a cardiac arrest. Thankfully, he is okay. He's doing much better. And again, he has relationships with players on this team, running back Miles Sanders, cornerback Avante Maddox. EJ, you spoke with Miles earlier in the week. How is he doing mentally as all the players in the league have prepared for a game today? And thankfully, again, our thoughts are with Damar as he continues in his recovery.
Absolutely, Josh. Yeah, I think, especially early in the week, you could see it was weighing heavy on players, whether it was Jason Kelsey or Miles Sanders, A.J. Brown, James Bradbury. A lot of guys talked about how it was weighing heavy on them. How could it not? It's a scary situation for everyone. For those guys especially, I'm sure that it was difficult to see that, people who have personal connections with him, it really was. It seemed like they saved his life on the field. And, obviously he got really, really good medical care. And, I saw a picture just a few minutes ago of Miles Sanders FaceTiming with Damar on the field, and taking a picture with him with his phone out, which is really cool. So, yeah, I'm sure that, the entire league was affected by it. Even we were affected by it, just hard to really kind of shift our focus to football because, it was such a serious situation and, just a very human, reaction would be to kind of struggle to get back to the game. But, I do think that by the end of the week, I think Miles seemed to be very, encouraged by the news, Damar kind of being able to talk to people, call people. Miles says that Damar scared the, what out of him a little bit. So, yeah, definitely, still I'm looking out in the field. I see the 3 with the blue outline. I think everybody's still thinking about Damar, but yeah, definitely encouraging to see, the updates throughout the week. We think we're checking our phones a lot and, really hoping to get some good news every time that we could check for it. And I definitely think that, it's encouraging to see the steps he's made.
Yeah, thankfully, again, he is in much better condition. Miles Sanders FaceTiming with Damar Hamlin here on the field at Lincoln Financial Field. And again, the Week 18 is here. Some games had already started a couple hours ago that are about to wind up. And here the Eagles are at 4:25, ready to host the New York Giants. EJ, let's shift our focus to today's game. It can be as simple as win and they get the 1 seed. I think that is where the entire team's concentration has been this entire week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, even after 2 straight losses, the Eagles are still in a position where, A win gets them exactly where they would want to be going into the season. The first round bye, home field advantage throughout the playoffs. It's all still in front of them. And, obviously a little bit of a good break for them here because they have the Giants coming in who are already locked into the sixth seed and don't have as much to play for. And it looks like they'll be starting a lot of their backups today, so the Eagles will have a little bit of a favorable matchup for sure. But yeah, definitely. Even with the first losing streak of the season, 2 games dropped, they still are in a position to take care of business here today.
Yeah, as you and I have spoken to players throughout the week, and even after last week's loss to the New Orleans Saints, tight end Dallas Goddard said at the beginning of the year, if you told them that they would have a chance to clinch the division, get the NFC's #1 seed in Week 18, they would take it. Unfortunately, again, for the team, they've lost 2 in a row. You explained it is their first losing streak of the season, definitely their first big dose of adversity. We'll see how this team responds, EJ. Again, that you mentioned that the Giants are starting their backups, but more importantly, as we shift the focus back to the Eagles, quarterback Jalen Hurts, he's poised to make his return from a 2-game absence with an injury to his throwing shoulder. EJ, what are your expectations today for Jalen as he gets back on the field here before the start of the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, we saw him in practice the last 2 weeks, and his throwing motion doesn't seem all that affected by the injury. At least from the naked eye. Watching from a distance, I don't know what it feels like for him, but for us, it definitely seemed like he was comfortable throwing the ball with velocity and zip. But I think that offensive coordinator Shane Steichen kind of admitted, like, they need to account for the injury a little bit in the way that they use him today. I don't think you'll expect to see him have double-digit carries, not necessarily designed runs at least. I think that they'll try to be a little more careful with him because they don't want him to aggravate the shoulder injury. They don't want him to, take too many hits on that shoulder. But yeah, I mean, I think that as far as his throwing motion goes, again, it looked like he was comfortable throwing the ball.
Yeah, and as Nick Sirianni pointed out, he doesn't necessarily have boxes to check. It was more so just making sure that that shoulder was okay. EJ, you discussed how the coaching staff might game plan around that. At the end of the day, though, Jalen Hurts is Jalen Hurts because of his makeup, because of his grit. A play that really kind of depicts who he is as a player. EJ, Week 2, Monday Night Football. It happened down there in the north end zone. Jalen Hurts gets stopped between that 5 and 10 yard line. He's about 6-7 yards away from the end zone. And he just pushes through 4 or 5 defenders. Not necessarily saying that situation might happen today, but that's just in his DNA and his makeup. If those yards are to be had, if there's a score to be had, Jalen Hurts is going to exert that effort. We'll see how the injury limits him here again today. We'll discuss later, what the Eagles really need and need to prioritize today. But again, getting Jalen out without any additional injuries has to be at the top of the list as they focus their attention after this week towards the playoffs. Again, if they win, they are that #1 seed. They'll get a bye and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. EJ, let's just briefly recap the season. I know we're not necessarily at the end of the year. There is more football to be played. But overall, would you say this team exceeded expectations that were placed at the beginning of the year? Again, an opportunity here to lock up the #1 seed.
Yeah, I think, no matter how you look at the season at this point, they definitely have exceeded my expectations. Going into the year, I thought they'd be a team that could win double-digit games for sure. I remember pinpointing 2 games. I think I had them at 11 wins going or 10 wins going into the season. And I remember I pinpointed 2 games and I said, if Jalen Hurts is, really taking the next step, I think that they could win these 2 games and be maybe a 12-win team, maybe a 13-win team. And now they're in a position where they could be a 14-win team at the top of the conference. They've had stretches where they've been, obviously the most dominant team in the NFL. Obviously, last 2 weeks they've been, maybe struggling a little bit without Jalen Hurts, but still, yeah. I mean, this team, going into the season, I don't think many had, Super Bowl aspirations for, but I still think that is within reach for the team. The way the conference broke, and just what we've seen from Jalen Hurts and the group as a whole. The offense with AJ Brown and Dallas Goedert. The steps that Devontae Smith has made this year. The defense, with a chance to make history as a defensive front with the pass rush. I mean, I think that they definitely have exceeded my expectations by a decent amount. Obviously we'll see how the playoffs go. How the day goes, and then how the playoffs follow. But they definitely have exceeded my expectations going into the year.
Not only a chance to wrap up the NFC's number one seed, which again would secure them home field advantage and a bye week in the opening round of the playoffs. They've got a chance to get the division title and also EJ to set a new franchise record for most wins. Again, looking to bounce back here from a two-game losing streak. EJ, let's transition over to who's hurt and who's healthy. In addition to Jalen Hurts, EJ, this team is getting some more reinforcements. They start with safety Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. He is back from a lacerated kidney injury. He's missed over a month on IR. And Robert Quinn, the in-season acquisition trade from the Chicago Bears, he is also back. Two very contrasting players in regards to their impact on this team. CJ Gardner Johnson, despite missing 5 games, is still tied for most interceptions in the NFL. That is a pretty amazing stat. They're looking to get him back in the fold here. Uh, let's talk some CJ, EJ. What do you anticipate there for him? Does he slide back into his safety role, replacing rookie Reed Blankenship? Does he possibly go to the nickel where they are missing Avante Maddox, who is out with a toe injury? He's officially on the inactive list. What are your expectations today for Gardner Johnson?
Yeah, I think today I wouldn't I'd be a little surprised to see him playing heavy slot snaps. I think, just based off of the matchup, I don't necessarily think it's, a need this weekend, but in the playoffs, I definitely think depending on who the matchup might be, if you're playing a dominant slot receiver, I think Reed Blankenship has played well enough to, continue his role as a deep safety. It's also just easier to hide, a guy at safety than it is at slot corner, he's further from the ball. So, I could see, depending on a matchup, maybe they do need CJ Gardner Johnson to play heavy slot snaps at some point. During the playoffs, and I think he's capable of doing it. As they kind of insulate for the loss of Avante Maddox, who's out with a toe injury. The defensive secondary has been really good this year. Josiah Scott's been up and down. I would say. He's had a couple of good plays. Obviously, had the interception against the New Orleans Saints, but he's also had some stretches where he struggles in man coverage. I think he limits what they are able to do a little bit on the back end. And I think that CJ Gardner Johnson offers them that versatility that we saw Jonathan Gannon take advantage of when CJ was in the lineup, being able to put him in different alignments and kind of, have him solve problems a little bit for that group.
Yeah, and Robert Quinn also poised to make his return. EJ, when you look at that acquisition, and it hasn't necessarily gone the way that fans might have envisioned, but it's hard to kind of pick and choose your gripes with this team when, number one, they lead the NFL in sacks. I think they're the first team in NFL history to have 4 guys with double-digit sacks, so there are definitely sacks to be had, and it's mostly those front guys in front of him. He'll definitely get more snaps today in regards to workload with Josh Sweat being out with a neck injury. But again, 4 guys with double-digit sacks. Hassan Reddick has been as advertised. It's exactly why they paid him all that money. And Josh Sweat kind of tearing up. And Brandon Graham making his return. He is a candidate for comeback player of the year. EJ, other injuries to mention. We talked about Avante Maddox still being out with a toe injury. Perhaps one of the most important players on the team, Lane Johnson, is still sidelined. This was as expected as he tries to push rehab and return for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, with Lane, I think that we'll see how he looks. Once he's back, but I think Jack Driscoll kind of got a little bit of a bad rap. Obviously, he's not as dominant as Lane Johnson or even Jordan Mailata for that matter. But I thought he played passable. I think that Cam Jordan is a pretty good defensive end and kind of a matchup issue for Jack Driscoll. That's kind of one of the things with him is that he might not be able to hold up against power rushers as well. He's got shorter arms and a little bit lighter of a guy. But yeah, no, I think that they should be able to get through today without Lane. And then again, we'll see how Lane looks in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's tough considering last week, you and I identified it, and then a few days later, Shane Steichen admitted it. He acknowledged it, but that was his worst game by far as a play caller since he took over play calling responsibilities last year. Just was unable to get Gardner Minshew in any type of rhythm, put the entire really offensive unit in tough spots last week. And, definitely some reinforcements coming in today with Jalen Hurts, prior to his injury, was a front runner for that league MVP award, competing there with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Burrow, Josh Allen, those top quarterbacks in the league. Jalen Hurts has missed these past 2 games, but you cannot speak again to the magnitude of his return today in that starting lineup back there under center. EJ, if we had to wrap it up into really just 3 goals for today, I think The top three things that I identify is win, obviously get that number one seed, avoid any additional injuries. That's really, really important. And just seeing that Jalen Hurts is functional, not maybe back to that MVP level, but just making sure that throwing shoulder is functional, that he's able to do what he does. Like, he likes a phrase that he used coming out of college is get freaky. Maybe he doesn't get as freaky today, but also just making sure that he is functional again with that throwing shoulder.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Eagles would mind if he gets freaky per se, but I think what really they're going to want is if he's out there in the open field, they're going to want him to slide today. No unnecessary hits, as you mentioned. I think the Eagles would hope that today goes. Obviously, Giants are resting a lot of starters. I think the Eagles are hoping that they kind of get out to a lead here and get Jalen Hurts on the sideline, watch him with the baseball cap on, give that shoulder a little bit more rest before the playoffs come around. So yeah, I think if he is in that open field, I don't think they're going to want him fighting for extra yards today. I think they want him to get on the ground.
It is time for our favorite segment. It is called What You Said. A reminder to all of our viewers back home. The place to submit your comments and questions is inquirer.com/Eagles Game Day. Who knows, during our next show, whether it be next week in Tampa if they lose this game, or in 2 weeks if they secure that home field advantage in first round bye, we will have a chance to read your comments and questions in this segment called What You Said. EJ, our first comment comes from Jack Verica, who says, run Jalen Hurts the first offensive play, then score 30 against this Giants team, no matter who they play. EJ, that is a very bold statement, as you kind of just alluded to. You want to see Jalen Hurts sliding, not taking those tough impact hits for extra yards. But essentially, as Jack points out, this is what the team wants. They want to jump out to a big lead and hopefully rest their starters in the second half against a Giants team that is from the get resting their main guys.
Yeah, I mean, to pull our viewers behind the curtain, maybe they noticed that the PA announcer was going on a little longer than usual today. It's because the Giants have a lot of inactives. They've got a lot of practice squad call-ups, a lot of roster maneuvers to kind of, get as many starters rest as they can. So, the Eagles definitely have. I mean, they beat this team, by more than 20 points a couple, was it a month ago with both teams at full strength. So they definitely have a talent advantage going into this game. Now, listen, the guys are going to be playing. They're playing for their careers in some cases. We're going to talk about Davis Webb at some point. Like, that's a guy who has never started a game, but that's, this is a huge opportunity for him to, kind of make an imprint on the league. So, the guys that are going to play are going to be hungry. They're going to have fresh legs, early in the game. So it might not be as easy to jump out to a double digit lead. It's still the NFL. These guys still get paid too, right? But yeah, I definitely think that's the goal for the Eagles is to get, Jalen Hurts off the field as soon as they can if that situation arises.
Yeah, James Bradbury earlier in the week pointed out that he's ready to go no matter who lines up in front of them. Just touching a bit on the quarterback situation there for the Giants, EJ, for majority of the week, we thought Tyrod Taylor, even the coaching staff, when we were speaking to them, they anticipated that he might be out there. It is not. It is, as you mentioned, Davis Webb, not exactly a high octane offense here for the Giants coming in. But again, as you point out, these guys aren't going to necessarily roll over. The Eagles, I believe, are very heavy favorites coming into this game. I think 15, 16 points. The anticipation, though, again, for Nick Sirianni, his goal, keep everyone healthy, get off to a big lead, as the three of us have pointed out, and rest those guys there in the second half. EJ, our next comment comes from Geb, who says, I'm glad to see CJ Gardner-Johnson back. He'll get a chance to knock off the rust. I really like this guy. Hopefully we keep him. EJ, we spoke about the impact of getting Gardner-Johnson back into the starting lineup against an underwhelming Giants team. I think the most important thing as we kind of focus, while we're in the season, EJ, it's tough to describe, but really, I mean, as the team was doing so well all throughout the year, the aspirations focused towards the playoffs and the Super Bowl, and that's where we are. But again, there's other things to discuss as the offseason gets closer. Not only does the team have 2 first-round picks, but this team is going to look very, very different next year with a lot of guys playing on expiring contracts, C.J. Gardner-Johnson being one of them. Again, this team is going to look very, very different next year. I'd be surprised if they're able to retain a lot of the impact players that have emerged from this season.
Yeah, and CJ's an interesting case. It's his first year playing safety full time. The indication was that he switched to safety, or, he wanted to switch to safety because he couldn't get that lucrative deal as a slot corner, which is a position the teams don't value quite as much. I feel like it's little bit easier to find a capable slot corner. But it's ironic though, because you need impact players at those spots still. You've seen how successful the Eagles have been with Avonte Maddox, in the slot relative to Josiah Scott. So yeah, but like I said, I think CJ will be an interesting case in the offseason. That league tied league lead with 6 interceptions. That some of that was right place, right time for him, but that's not going to matter, during contract negotiations. They're going to talk about him as, rightfully so, as a playmaking safety, a guy who has, made a difference. The Eagles value take away so much. CJ Gardner-Johnson definitely has some leverage there, kind of pinpointing, his ability to, create turnovers and just play different spots in the defense. So I'm curious to see how his market bears out. I think that there is a chance that he, could command a pretty good deal. So yeah, I know we're not quite there yet, but it's definitely, it's never too early to start thinking about those things.
Yeah, and just in regards to the defense, EJ, you think about the starting 11. I'm going to run through the list. It's about half of that unit. Javon Hargrave, both of the starting linebackers, Kaiser White and TJ Edwards, safety Marcus Epps, and then cornerback James Bradbury. And as we've mentioned with the start of this question, safety CJ Gardner-Johnson, all on expiring contracts. The big overlying factor here, EJ, is Jalen Hurts and the contract that is waiting to be had for him. He is eligible for an extension as soon as the season is over. And from everything that we have reported and discussed with players, with coaches, with guys across the front office, that is really the team's priority now as he emerged as one of the top tier quarterbacks here in his 3rd season in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what he commands, but for sure, I mean, he's made himself a lot of money this year just by being one of the best guys in the league as far as at whatever stat you really look at, whether you want to go advanced metrics, just regular counting stats. I mean, he's 1 touchdown away from setting the Eagles single season record for total touchdowns this year. So yeah, he's been even better than I think we could have imagined. As far as the progress he's made, we talked about it a lot throughout the show, throughout the season. About the progress he's made and how it surprised us, but yeah, definitely going to be the top priority. Once the off season's upon us.
A lot of expiring deals, CJ Gardner-Johnson included, but the team's priority continues to be Jalen Hurts, who again has emerged as a top quarterback. He's shown so much strides in his improvement, specifically as a passer and decision maker. In year 3, he makes his return from a 2-game absence today in the regular season finale. EJ, it is prediction time. Before we get to our scores and players to watch out for, let's go to some thoughts from Inquirer beat reporter Jeff McClain.
Hi, I'm Jeff McClain of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks for joining me here at GameDay Central to talk about this season finale between the Eagles and the New York Giants. And even at this point on Saturday, while I'm recording this, we don't know yet if Jalen Hurts has been cleared to return to play. He was listed as questionable on Friday, although Nick Sirianni said he was trending in that direction. And from what everything I hear is that he's likely to play, but we don't know quite yet. But let's go under that premise. Let's assume that Jalen Hurts is at quarterback, and let's also assume that the New York Giants aren't going to play key starters like Daniel Jones at quarterback, Saquon Barkley at running back, maybe Dexter Lawrence at defensive tackle. And that's why you've seen the line with the Eagles favored by 14, the Giants getting 14 points from the favored Eagles. And my guess is that's how it'll play out. So if that's the case, then, I mean, this is a game the Eagles should, on paper, win. Jalen Hurts is probably not going to be 100%. They're going to have to curtail the offense to make sure that he hasn't exposed himself further to harm on that right shoulder. Maybe you'll see a few early zone reads, I think, just to give the Giants a little taste of what could happen, keep them honest in terms of when Jalen does hand off to Miles Sanders, who by the end of the week was fine. He still got the knee issue that limited him a little bit of practice, but I think he'll be fine. You have him, you have Kenny Gainwell, you have Boston Scott. Hey, hand the ball off to those guys. Run the offense, try and keep it a little balanced early. When Jalen does have throws or he's outside the pocket, hey, get down on the ground, run out of bounds, throw the ball out of bounds. Just don't do anything to expose yourself to further harm, because we all know ultimately what's more important is how the Eagles play in the postseason. And we've seen last week especially that this offense is different with Jalen Hurts versus Gardner Minshew. So, but that being said, you still have A.J. Brown, you still have Dallas Goedert, you still have Devontae Smith, you still have a good offensive line, even though Lane Johnson's going to be out another week. I mean, that should be enough to win against a Giants defense that's not going to have a lot of key guys, theoretically. Anything can happen. Tyrod Taylor's a quarterback for the Giants. This is a guy that has like 53 career starts. He's won more than half of them. He's a capable backup. He can kind of go in there and run that offense. But, I mean, with Barkley's essentially the only big playmaker that they have at the skill position spot. So if he's not going to play, it should be tough sledding, I think, for the run game to get started. And then for Tyrod Taylor, I mean, the Giants really haven't had much in terms of receivers stretching the fields. And the Eagles defense has been fine. Has it been great? Over this last month, no. They only allowed 13 points to the Saints, so they did more than enough for the Eagles to win that game. It was the offensive sluggishness that really kind of resulted in that second loss for the Eagles. But that defense is clicking. I know there won't be a Josh Sweat, but Robert Quinn could come off IR. There's a possibility that safety CJ Gardner Johnson is ready to go after his lacerated kidney. You put him back in there. That secondary doesn't look as bad. That should help them against the Giants defense and really put in play for the Eagles to accomplish, what I would think would have been a totally unexpected record in number of sacks by an NFL team. The record is the 1984 Chicago Bears with 72. The Eagles currently have 67. So they're only 6 away from breaking that record. I know there would be a 17th game involved, but nonetheless, that would be quite an accomplishment for this Jonathan Gannon defense. So I have the Eagles winning relatively comfortably, 27-16. I have it less than the 14 points because I think at some point the Eagles are going to have a pretty comfortable lead and they're going to start pulling their guys as well. And maybe you'll see a late touchdown for the Giants. So Eagles get that number 1 seed with the win. I haven't been great the last 2 weeks in picking the Eagles, but I think if Hurts is in there, that should be enough, more than enough for the Eagles to beat a Giants team that's not going to have a lot of key guys playing. So that's it here from me. Jeff McClain of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Back to you guys at Game Day Central.
Thank you to Jeff McClain for his thoughts on today's game. EJ, today has the potential to be a very exciting day in South Philadelphia. The specialists just came out. Devontae Smith, Kenny Gainwell, Britton Covey were greeted on the field right now by Howie Roseman. Everyone seems to be in a very excited mood. Who are some players to watch out for? Give me one on offense and one on defense today as the Eagles host the Giants.
Yeah, give me Miles Sanders on offense. As I mentioned, the Giants have a lot of their key starters on the inactive list. Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams are among those players who are going to be rested. The Eagles ran all over the Giants with those guys in the lineup, and those guys are really good interior defensive linemen. No credit to them, but even still, the fact that they're out, I think the Eagles can run the ball. I think they're going to want to run the ball a little bit more. Keep Jalen Hurts, out of situations where he might be able to aggravate that shoulder. So, give me Miles Sanders on offense, and on defense, give me Hassan Reddick. He's closing in. He's probably not going to get to 20. I think he's at 16 and a half sacks, but already at a career high. As Jeff mentioned, the Eagles are kind of flirting with the single season record for sacks. Obviously, they have the extra game, but that's just how it goes. That's part of it. So, give me Hassan Reddick having a big game. I feel like he's been on the tear. Kind of has been as advertised as kind of like that sack merchant that they were looking for in free agency. Going into the year. So, those are my two.
EJ goes Miles Sanders and Hassan Reddick. Give me the obvious one on offense, Jalen Hurts. Again, the team wants to see him functional. They want to see him avoid any further injuries. But overall, it just seems like the vibe is that they're happy to have him back there. Leading up to the game, the Eagles tried to play keep away or be secretive about who was going to be the quarterback, but AJ Brown, Dallas Goedert, even Gardner Minshew kind of spilled the beans. They said they were all excited for Jalen to return, and he does make his return today back in the starting lineup. Obvious player to watch out for. On defense, give me the cornerback duo, Darius Slay and James Bradbury. I think last week they kind of took it personal that I think Andy Dalton and Taysom Hill completed something like 14, 15 consecutive passes in a row before their first incompletion. Throughout the week, you kind of saw it kind of bugged them. There will be plays to be had here with Davis Webb back there under center for the Giants. So, again, to recap, Miles Sanders, Jalen Hurts, Hassan Reddick, and the cornerback duo of James Bradbury, Darius Slay, all players to watch out for today in the regular season finale. EJ, give me a score prediction. Do the Eagles get the 1 seed?
Yeah, I think they get those shirts and those hats that they've been hoping to get since Dallas. I have this 28-17. I don't think this is going to be, I don't think this is necessarily going to go as planned. I don't think it's going to be, jump out to a 21-0 lead and kind of just cruise to the finish line. I mean, not many games are that way. It's still the NFL. Obviously, the Eagles have been, capable of doing that at times this season. Kind of blowing teams out and having, pretty uneventful second halves. But I could see this Giants team being feisty for a little bit here. Kind of keeping them honest. But yeah, I do think the Eagles just have the talent advantage. They have way more at stake. I think that they will be able to pull this one out. But maybe it's not as easy as everyone's kind of suggesting it would be. I think that 16.5 point line. Stranger things have happened. I don't think that it's going to be some humongous blowout where everybody's turning the game off in halfway through the third quarter. But maybe I'll be wrong. You'll never know, right?
Yeah, just can't imagine the reaction from fans here and throughout the city if they were to lose three in a row, essentially go from number one seed, home field advantage, bye week, to having to travel to Tampa if the Cowboys defeat the Commanders later tonight. So a lot to pay attention throughout the NFL, but it's simple. It's very, very simple for this team. If they win, they get that one seed and they move forward to the playoffs. A lot to look forward to. EJ, any final thoughts today before we get wrapped up?
No, I'm excited to see the game and excited to go into the playoffs, no matter how it will be, whether we're headed to Tampa or maybe enjoying a couple of days before the Eagles get back to a regular week if they get that first round bye.
It has been awesome being here with you, with all our fans, with all of the viewers on Game Day Central. But it's not the end. There is playoff football ahead. We'll see exactly how that plays out today if the Eagles are able to secure that number one seed and get that home field advantage throughout the playoffs. We'll be back here in 2 weeks. EJ, I know we both enjoyed Tampa last year. We're biased journalists, but I think the team's preference would be wanting to stay here in Philadelphia for home field advantage. EJ, what exactly are you going to do over these next 2 weeks leading into the playoffs? Any special stories that we might tease our viewers with?
I don't want. I'm gonna keep it close to the chest, Josh. You're just gonna have to keep following me to find out. But yeah, definitely have some good playoff coverage coming up. I definitely think people should keep an eye on us. It's Inquirer.com/Eagles to keep an eye on our stuff. And one more plug on the Inquirer.com/Eagles game day while we're at it. Hop over there. Let us know what you thought of the show. Even let us know what you're thinking about the game. So yeah, we'll be over there. We'll talk to you guys then.
All right, like Nick Sirianni, EJ's keeping it close to his vest. We have a ton of stories planned here over these next couple of weeks. Inquirer.com/Eagles Game Day is the place to be. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of Inquirer Live at Game Day Central. Make sure you stick around on our Game Day Central homepage, Inquirer.com/Eagles Game Day. We'll say it one more time. That is the place to be for all of our coverage and to continue the conversation with us throughout the game. For EJ Smith, I am Josh Tolentino. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you in the playoffs. Enjoy the game.